Welcome to Experiencing Consciousness. My name is Dyba.
And I'm Dr. Kathryn Rossi. We're happy you're here.
Okay, this is another episode of our podcast, and today we're focusing on time distortion, which is a technique, technology, hypnotic phenomena, a state, something to utilize, something to think about, something to talk about, isn't it?
Oh, and something that's so interesting that time distortion is natural. We do it all the time. We probably do it 12 times a day. And let's just go to the far end of the spectrum. When you dream at night, not everybody dreams at night, but a lot of people do. And you have a dream, and it can seem like it goes on forever and ever and ever, when really, how long was it?
Probably around 20 to 30 minutes in
clock time, yes. And yet sometimes it's like you can go from the beginning of time and on into infinity. And so that is, like time distortion. When you're driving down the road and you're looking for your exit and you've been driving for a while, and then all of a sudden there is your exit. Oh, where was I this last 15 minutes? That's time distortion. So you can use time distortion, particularly in psychotherapy, as an adjunct to helping people in new ways. I'm sure you use time distortion.
Sometimes, yes, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm thinking about time distortion, many times I use it in a context that actually is well illustrated by one of the Erickson cases. I don't know where actually was that case described, but I remember there was a case of a guy who came to Dr. Erickson for seeking psychotherapy because he was a musician, actually playing on a guitar in some kind of bar or pub. And the difficulty that he has was that he didn't have time to practice, and he wanted to be better, to actually get better paid gigs or something and develop. And so the difficulty was that he had a lot of jobs to maintain and stuff, difficult situation in life, something like that. And I don't really remember the whole details of his story, but the thing is that he said to Dr. Erickson, is it possible to somehow utilize hypnosis to help me increase my ability in playing the instrument? And Erickson put him into a trance, and then through I don't know if it was one session or multiple sessions, but some time went by, and he taught him how to actually distort time, how to utilize, how to use the time distortion in such a way. He was telling him actually a lot of stories about how the time distortion works in real life, that sometimes you can be somewhere and actually have a feeling that the time goes very slowly, whereas it goes quickly, and so on, and other times that it goes quickly where it goes slowly in the objective time measurement. The example of that actually convinces me a lot is when you are waiting in the waiting room for to have an appointment with the doctor. Most of the times one is sitting and sitting and sitting, and the time goes by and it's very long time, and suddenly you look at the clock, you think like you are there for like half an hour or an hour or something like that, and then you look at the clock and the clock time tells you that it's like 5 minutes or something. So there were examples like that. He created an associational network for that client to work with. And then he told him that his unconscious mind can actually expand and condense time to help him achieve the goals that he wanted, and that he can, you know, create like a second or 10 seconds that's going to last a minute or two of subjective time, and so on. And that his unconscious mind can go on those periods of time into a deep sort of trance state and practice the playing of the instrument, remembering the tension of muscles and stuff like that, you know, repeating that and actually making it better, practice the whole thing. Also totally unconsciously, so that he would not even be aware of that, but he will see that his ability improves. And I like that example because it shows that it shows how you can actually harvest or seed the time distortion within a client, and also that it actually can be utilized, that it's a hypnotic phenomena that can be utilized very practically. The other example that comes to my mind is that people actually use that to help women, you know, give birth under hypnosis, that they expand some time and then they condense others so that it would feel shorter, mainly the time with the pains and stuff, you know.
Yes, I mean, it becomes really interesting. And in the practical application, that when a client comes in and they're coming to see you because something difficult or painful is happening in their life, or as you point out, there could be a physical pain.
Yeah.
And so and when people naturally go into trance, and so often they'll their body kind of slows down, their eyes might close, that they go into a trance where they're not in the regular linear consciousness. And then the doors can open up for experiencing some of the difficulty. And that's when time distortion can be introduced, is to say, you know, it's amazing how a minute can seem like an hour, or an hour can seem like a minute. And it might even be that you can experience in 5 minutes 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And even as I'm saying this, Jan, you're looking at me and your eyes are, you're going internal. And there's
recalling some of my experiences of that kind.
And so there's a calmness about it, where what you're saying is that that in a short period of time, you may be able to experience a lot of things. And it could be difficult things, obviously, if it's the beginning of the session. And so the idea that, you mean I could experience this 10 years of trauma in 5 minutes, according to clock time? So it gives people this opportunity to actually go there, to the difficult spots, knowing it's going to be much shorter than what they thought it was going to be. And when it gets towards the end of the session, where maybe some delightful things are coming up, then it can be a time expansion thing, of where every minute, you know, feels so much longer than that, rather than shorter. So, you know, therapeutically, it's a really important phenomenon. Now, in the why do they call time distortion the hallmark of therapeutic hypnosis? It's, you know, I don't do this all the time. It's only if it seems appropriate. But where you say, well, how long do you think that you were in trance? And they'll say things like, well, I think it was 5 minutes. And then you can say, well, actually, it was 45 minutes. And it helps people to understand that they have this ability to distort time for good health, for exploration.
Exactly. So if we were to summarize that part of our conversation, are there any particular ways of utilizing time distortion, or is there any model, or some kind of hints on how to utilize that, or types of interventions that you can base on? We talked about some interventions with pain, some interventions with expanding some comfortable periods, and how else can it be utilized in a clinical practice?
Oh, I think it's infinite according to the person, place, and time, in that we're constantly growing. And so there's nothing is static. So, in the instance of someone who's experiencing pain, that one technique that can be helpful is that while one part of you feels perfectly comfortable, and of course, that clients argue with you about this. It's like, no, nothing feels comfortable. It's like, well,
everything is,
maybe that's true, but often there's some part of you that feels comfortable so in getting that situated. And then to say, so can that part of you that feels really comfortable begin to comfort that pain? And help to transform that pain just for a minute. And that minute may seem much longer. And then you time that, because you don't want the person to stay into pain. And then you say, okay, and coming back, and how was that for you? And it'd be like, well, I went to this mountain stream, and it was really beautiful, and I could hear the sounds, and I could feel the cold water on my arm that hurt, and my arm stopped hurting. And so that the experience that they had was much richer than that 60 seconds that you gave them. So there's ways of working with it that are really natural, and they're direct, but they're also permissive.
How would you facilitate time distortion? How would you, induce it in, or invite it into a trance experience? Let's say we are working with someone for the first time. How to start? What to take into consideration while working with time distortion, if you want to utilize that therapeutic?
Well, what's interesting is that it's only in rare instances that I'll specifically introduce time distortion. And it's really in the instance of some kind of really difficult thing, or some kind of joy that the person is experiencing, where I want to see if they can experience it shorter or longer. But most of the time, I let it happen naturally. And so the trick is, trick is never a good word, is it? To be able to be sensitive to that person, where they don't feel like you're doing something to them, but they're allowed to do it themselves.
Okay. First of all, the trick connects in my mind with childhood. I loved when I was a child. I loved tricks and magic, and things like that. But the other thing. So you say that you let it happen naturally. So in my mind, there is that part that says, I'm thinking about all these people that are not familiar too much with hypnosis and stuff, and they're gonna say, you let it happen naturally, which actually means what to do, you know?
Yes,
What
exactly.
what
Well,
do you
you know,
mean? I mean, people, I mean, when you functioning with people, you certainly have that kind of experience that sometimes, time goes by like this, suddenly an hour or two has gone by somewhere, and sometimes like 5 minutes lasts for like ages. But
well, and that's exactly it. And so when you're wanting to facilitate some time distortion,
Mhm,
you do a little explanation like that. And as you're explaining that, what's happening to the person is that they're remembering the time
mhm,
distortions that happen for them naturally. And another technique that I almost never use because I'm not real good at it is the confusion technique.
mhm,
And that sometimes with time distortion, you can introduce the confusion technique. And so the person naturally then is going to go inside because they're in the moment, like they're not getting what's being said around them. And then they go into a trance, and that then you can facilitate that. I know I'm being a little more vague than you hope, but this is this I like to promote sensitivity
mhm.
and the experiential aspect of it. So for people who are listening, you already are going into all kinds of experiences. Yeah, I had one the other day. I went to a special seminar and it seemed like it took forever to drive there. And coming home, in my mind, took 5 minutes.
Mm. So,
When driving there was 35 minutes, and then driving home was 5 in my mind. Actually, the clock time was 35 minutes. So driving there felt like an hour, driving home felt like 5 minutes. I burst into laughter with the fact that I was experiencing this time distortion after this really satisfying seminar. And we do that a lot in life. When something really great has happened, we're kind of staying with that. And then the mundane thing like driving home, you know, who needs to be paying such attention to that? So it's the natural aspect of it that I think that people get really excited about.
and to stay with the facts, the distance both ways was the same,
Same.
equal.
Yeah. And so, so when you can, for your own self, utilize time distortion in a way that's so positive that that it's almost like a transformative thing of knowing that you have all these consciousnesses on the inside of you, and yet there's this artificial clock time that we pay a little too much attention to, in my mind. When you go to the movies and the movie's really good, but it feels like you're there for 20 minutes and it might be 2 hours, for instance, and yet you remember it all. Like, how does that happen? But we're human, and this is what we do when we're engaged and fascinated.
Yeah, that's true. And in my case, most of the times when I'm really focused on something, the times actually condenses.
Right.
And that most of the times happen to my clients when they are in a trance state. And the deeper they go, the more they experience the time distortion towards condensation of time.
Yeah, it's natural.
And how to reverse that process to expansion, since most of the times I assume that if most of the times I am concentrated on something, I experience the condensation, everything goes shorter, then that may be my assumption is maybe that's more natural to that kind of focused, deep absorbed states. So how in those deep absorbed states facilitate the opposite effect, which goes to time expanding?
Well, I associate now, you're going to have to test this out for yourself. But
Okay.
so this is not something that's written in literature or studied or anything like that. But I associate more of the happiness, the positive things where you really want to expand the time. And so that's just my experience.
Mhm.
And so if you're the kind of person that is able to dwell a lot in happiness and the goodness and the blessings, then I think you naturally go into time expansion. So that's one thing. But what you can do is when you're with somebody in therapy and you can see that they're really enjoying something, and then it's like, yes, and can you stay with that? Can you see how long you can stay with that? And even in using, can it seem like it's going on for minutes, for hours, for days, for years, maybe even a lifetime? How will it show itself?
So building associations and how do you call that? The suggestions that are actually in like part of the sentences.
Well, yes, and it's I pose it in the form of a question. So and this is a hallmark of how I practice, is that I'm not wise enough to know exactly what's right for you. And so I will almost never tell you what to do. You've known me for years. How many times have I told you exactly what to do, Jan?
Well, I can recall one time when I was overworking, staying at your place in Los Osos, and you came to the home that I was living in. Remember the small home, and you said to me, you opened the door and you go, "Okay, Jan, that's it for today. No working. We've got St. Patrick's Day." And now, you remember what happened after that?
Oh yeah, I took you to the ale house.
Yeah.
For a proper St. Patrick's Day celebration.
Exactly. We need to repeat that, My proposition, we're gonna do a live podcast from over there about
So
about altered states of mind.
they changed the name of the place.
Oh,
My little town that I live in the town of Los Osos. And then there's this small subsection of Los Osos called Baywood.
mm-hmm.
And because it's on the bay and there used to be many more trees than there are now. So they renamed the place Beerwood.
Beerwood.
Yeah, instead of Baywood, it's Beerwood.
Well,
it's clever.
At least you know what you can find.
but and so that's this wonderful memory. And so let me ask you, how long have we been talking about this in your mind?
Today.
Yeah.
Conversation. I would.
How long does it feel?
Let me guess that it would be like 10 minutes, something like that.
Exactly. And it was about a minute and a half or two. And so how beautiful is this, that you can experience this lovely time distortion of this great memory. And of course, you're going to be remembering it for the rest of the day.
That's true. And actually, I feel a lot of emotions like about when I'm thinking about that, So it was very, very touching and enriching on many levels, by the way. We really
and then why not?
Yeah,
it's like, why not expand some of these memories that are really happy. And that was this experience that I rescued you from overwork. And it's,
From myself.
I rescued you from yourself. And I went there and I wasn't going to take no for an answer. And it was a transformative experience in our friendship and in your life.
And it was necessary. And it was the only one that I can remember that you actually told me what to do.
Yes, but that most of the time, I know I don't like people telling me what to do, so I don't tell people what to do. I ask questions, and then it becomes up to you of, when I say, can you take this into tomorrow and into tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and maybe into your lifetime? It's a question. I'm not telling you, and you will, do this. And because you're going to say, no, I'm not. I'd like to, but no, because you're telling me what to do. So it's just, I try to treat people the way that I like to be treated. And I want to grow my consciousness. I want to make this expansion. And this is what I try to do. So I think we've done really well in bringing people to the understanding of time distortion.
This was another episode of our Experiencing Consciousness podcast. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Jan. You're the best. Be well, be happy, celebrate life.